Lila Monroe was everywhere. Her face graced magazine covers, her songs topped the charts, and her movies shattered box office records. She was Hollywood's sweetheart, America's darling, a supernova burning bright in the entertainment galaxy. Paparazzi swarmed her every move, desperate for a snapshot, a quote, anything to feed the insatiable appetite of her fans. But Lila wasn't just a pretty face and a manufactured image. She genuinely cared. She volunteered at animal shelters, donated to children's hospitals, and used her platform to speak out about important causes. Her kindness was as radiant as her smile, and it was this genuine goodness that endeared her to millions. Tonight was the annual Hearts for Hope Charity Gala, a cause close to Lila's heart. She floated through the ballroom, a vision in a shimmering silver gown, greeting guests with warmth and sincerity. She laughed with children, listened intently to stories from survivors, and posed for countless photos, never once losing her radiant composure. Jason Statham, a hulking figure in a tailored suit, stood silently at the edge of the room, his eyes constantly scanning the crowd. He was Lila's personal bodyguard, a former Special Forces operative with a knack for blending into the background. He'd seen enough darkness in his life to recognize the subtle signs of danger, and tonight, something felt off. The air was thick with anticipation, not just for the evening's festivities, but for something else, something unseen. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that unseen eyes were studying Lila, not with admiration, but with a chilling, predatory hunger. He dismissed it as paranoia, a side effect of his past life, but the unease lingered, a knot tightening in his stomach. He moved closer to Lila, his senses on high alert, ready to protect her from whatever lurked in the shadows. The flashing lights of the cameras seemed to flicker for a moment, and in that brief instant, Jason thought he saw a glint of something metallic in the crowd, a fleeting shadow that vanished as quickly as it appeared. The feeling of dread intensified. Something wicked was coming. The metallic glint, the fleeting shadow, Jason knew he wasn't imagining things. He tightened his grip, his senses on overdrive. Lila was currently engaged in a conversation with a group of children, her laughter echoing through the ballroom. He hated to interrupt, but he couldn't risk it. "Lila, we need to go," he said, his voice low and urgent. Lila looked at him, surprised. "Jason, what's wrong? I promised these kids." "No time to explain. Now." He took her arm, gently but firmly, and began to steer her towards the exit. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging the ballroom into momentary darkness. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. When the lights returned, chaos erupted. Men in dark robes, their faces hidden behind grotesque masks depicting serpents, surged from the shadows. They moved with unsettling speed and coordination, their eyes burning with fanatical zeal. "The serpent's hand!" someone screamed, the words swallowed by the rising panic. Jason shoved Lila behind him, drawing his sidearm. "Get down!" he yelled, firing a warning shot into the ceiling. The cultists ignored him, their focus solely on Lila. They bypassed the other guests, their movements precise and deliberate. Two robed figures lunged at Jason, wielding curved daggers. He sidestepped the first attack, disarming the assailant with a swift kick to the wrist. The second cultist pressed the attack, but Jason intercepted the dagger with his forearm, twisting the attacker's arm until he heard a sickening snap. More cultists swarmed towards them, creating a wall of bodies. Jason fought with brutal efficiency, using his training to incapacitate his attackers with lethal precision. But they kept coming, an endless wave of fanatics. In the confusion, two cultists managed to slip past him. They grabbed Lila, covering her mouth with a cloth. She struggled, but the drug took effect almost instantly, her eyes glazing over as she slumped into their arms. "Lila!" Jason roared, breaking through the remaining cultists. But it was too late. The kidnappers vanished into the chaos, disappearing through a side exit before Jason could reach them. He stood there, amidst the carnage, his heart pounding with rage and self-reproach. He had failed. He had let them take her. The serpent's hand had struck, and Hollywood's sweetheart was now in their clutches. The massacre was about to begin. The ballroom was a scene of terror. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Paramedics rushed to tend to the injured, their faces grim. Jason stood amidst the chaos, the weight of his failure crushing him. The flashing lights painted grotesque shadows on the walls, a stark reminder of his inadequacy. He knelt beside a discarded serpent mask, his knuckles white as he clenched it in his fist. This wasn't just a job for Jason. It was personal. Years ago, before the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, before the expensive suits and celebrity clientele, Jason was a soldier. He served his country with honor, fighting in the shadows, protecting the innocent from the evils of the world. But even his skills couldn't always prevent tragedy. He lost comrades, friends, brothers in arms. He carried those ghosts with him, a constant reminder of his failures. When Lila's manager approached him, offering him the bodyguard position, Jason hesitated. He was tired of the violence, tired of the darkness. But there was something about Lila, something pure and genuine, that resonated with him. He saw a light in her that needed protecting, a kindness that deserved to be shielded from the harsh realities of the world. He took the job, vowing to keep her safe. He became her silent guardian, her watchful protector. He studied her routines, anticipated her needs, and eliminated any potential threats before they could even materialize. He was good at his job, the best. That's why his failure tonight stung so deeply. He closed his eyes, a wave of nausea washing over him. He saw Lila's face, her radiant smile, her genuine kindness. He imagined her fear, her confusion, her helplessness. He couldn't let her down again. Opening his eyes, his gaze hardened with resolve. The police could clean up the mess, investigate the crime. Jason had his own work to do. He stood up, his movements deliberate and purposeful. He walked out of the ballroom, leaving the chaos behind him. He was no longer just Lila's bodyguard. He was her avenger. He was going to hunt down the serpent's hand, tear their organization apart, and bring Lila home. He made a silent vow, a promise etched in blood. They had taken the wrong girl. They had awakened a sleeping giant. They would pay for their sins. Jason Statham was coming, and he was bringing hell with him. The rain lashed against the windows of Jason's secluded apartment, mirroring the storm raging inside him. He didn't bother turning on the lights, preferring the dim glow of his computer screen. He was a ghost in his own home, a phantom fueled by vengeance. He bypassed the official channels, knowing the police investigation would be slow and bureaucratic. He needed answers now. He reached out to his old network, a collection of informants, hackers, and former military personnel scattered across the globe. They owed him favors, and he was ready to collect. His fingers flew across the keyboard, navigating encrypted networks and accessing restricted databases. He searched for any mention of the serpent's hand, any clue that could lead him to their location. The cult was notoriously secretive, operating in the shadows for decades, leaving a trail of disappearances and unsolved murders in their wake. He found whispers of their rituals, their beliefs, their obsession with power and control. They preyed on the vulnerable, the lost, the desperate, promising them salvation in exchange for unwavering loyalty. Their leader, a charismatic figure known only as the Serpent, was a master manipulator, a puppeteer pulling the strings from the darkness. Jason discovered a pattern in their victims. They weren't just random abductions. The cult targeted individuals with unique talents or abilities, believing they could harness their energy for their own twisted purposes. Artists, musicians, scientists, all had vanished without a trace. Now, Lila was among them, her fame and influence making her a prime target for their depraved rituals. He focused his search on the cult's past victims, hoping to find a connection, a common thread that could lead him to their current location. He pored over old case files, police reports, and news articles, piecing together fragments of information. He found a recurring symbol, a stylized serpent coiled around a dagger, etched into the victim's belongings or found near their last known locations. The symbol led him to a remote area in the California desert, a desolate landscape dotted with abandoned mines and forgotten towns. It was the perfect place for a cult to hide, far from prying eyes and unwanted attention. Jason felt a surge of adrenaline. He was getting closer. He could almost taste it. He downloaded the coordinates, his mind already racing with possibilities. He knew he was walking into a trap. The serpent's hand would be expecting him. But he didn't care. He was ready to face them, to confront their evil, and to bring Lila home, no matter the cost. The rain continued to fall, washing away the grime of the city, preparing the world for the storm that was about to come. The coordinates pinpointed an abandoned mine shaft, its entrance hidden behind a crumbling facade of rusted metal and decaying wood. Jason knew the cult wouldn't make it easy. The desert was their domain, and they would be waiting for him, ready to defend their territory. But finding the location was only the first step. Jason needed to understand the cult's motives, their ultimate goal. Why Lila? What did they want from her? He delved deeper into the encrypted files, searching for answers. He found fragmented texts, cryptic symbols, and disturbing images that painted a chilling picture of the serpent's hand's beliefs. They believed that fame and influence were a form of energy, a powerful force that could be harnessed and controlled. They saw Lila as a vessel, a conduit to unimaginable power. They planned to perform a ritual sacrifice, a twisted ceremony that would drain her of her life force and transfer it to the serpent, their leader. The ritual was timed to coincide with the upcoming solar eclipse, a celestial event they believed would amplify the energy transfer. They would use ancient incantations, arcane symbols, and human sacrifice to achieve their goal. The thought of Lila being subjected to such a horrific ordeal sent a surge of rage through Jason. He slammed his fist on the desk, the force of the impact rattling the computer screen. He discovered detailed descriptions of the ritual, including the tools they would use, the chants they would recite, and the specific roles each cult member would play. He learned that Lila would be bound to an altar, her life slowly drained away as the serpent performed the ceremony. The cult believed that her suffering would amplify the power of the ritual, making it even more effective. Jason also uncovered information about the serpent's past. He was a former academic, a professor of ancient history who had become obsessed with occult practices. He had gathered a following of disillusioned students and desperate individuals, brainwashing them with his twisted ideology. He was a dangerous man, a charismatic psychopath who believed he was destined for greatness. The clock was ticking. The solar eclipse was only a few days away. Jason knew he had to act fast. He couldn't afford to waste any time. He needed to prepare, to gather his resources, and to plan his attack. He was going to infiltrate the cult's compound, disrupt their ritual, and rescue Lila before it was too late. He was going to unleash hell on the serpent's hand, and he wasn't going to stop until they were all dead. The desert was about to run red with blood. The apartment transformed. Gone were the trappings of a Hollywood bodyguard. The tailored suits, the expensive watches, the subtle sophistication. In their place emerged the tools of a warrior, meticulously arranged and ready for deployment. Jason was shedding his skin, reverting to the lethal predator he once was. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a secret armory. Assault rifles, shotguns, handguns, and knives gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. Ammunition crates stacked high, each bullet a promise of pain and destruction. Jason moved with practiced efficiency, selecting his weapons with cold calculation. He chose a customized AR-15, its barrel shortened for close-quarters combat, its stock modified for improved accuracy. He added a holographic sight for rapid target acquisition and a suppressor to minimize noise. For backup, he selected a Glock 19, reliable and deadly. He strapped a combat knife to his thigh, its blade razor-sharp and unforgiving. He didn't underestimate the enemy. He knew the serpent's hand would be heavily armed and fanatically devoted to their leader. They would fight to the death to protect their secrets and their twisted beliefs. Jason was outnumbered, but he had experience, training, and a burning desire for revenge on his side. He donned a tactical vest, its pockets filled with extra magazines, grenades, and medical supplies. He wore a black combat uniform, designed to blend into the shadows. He checked his communication devices, ensuring they were secure and operational. He needed to stay connected to his network, to receive updates and intel as he moved closer to the cult's compound. He studied the maps of the mineshaft, memorizing the layout, identifying potential entry points and choke points. He planned his route carefully, anticipating every possible obstacle and contingency. He knew he couldn't afford to make any mistakes. One wrong move could cost Lila her life. Before leaving, he paused, staring at a framed photograph on his desk. It was a picture of him and Lila, taken at a charity event a few weeks ago. She was smiling, her eyes sparkling with joy. He reached out and touched the glass, his fingers tracing the outline of her face. "I'm coming for you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I promise." He turned and walked out the door, disappearing into the night. The apartment was silent, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic ticking of a clock. The war had begun. Jason Statham was locked and loaded. The desert night was cold and unforgiving. The wind howled through the canyons, carrying whispers of forgotten souls. Jason moved like a shadow, his black combat gear blending seamlessly with the darkness. He approached the abandoned mineshaft, his senses on high alert. He had disabled the perimeter alarms with ease, using his technical skills to bypass their rudimentary security system. He knew the cult would rely on guards and patrols, but he was confident he could neutralize them without raising the alarm. Stealth was his greatest weapon. He spotted the first guard, silhouetted against the flickering light of a nearby watchtower. The guard paced back and forth, his rifle slung over his shoulder, his attention wavering. Jason moved silently behind him, his footsteps muffled by the sand. He drew his combat knife, its blade gleaming under the moonlight. With a swift and precise movement, he silenced the guard. One hand covered the guard's mouth, while the other plunged the knife into his neck. The guard slumped to the ground without a sound. Jason dragged the body into the shadows, concealing it from view. He continued his infiltration, moving deeper into the cult's compound. He encountered 2 more guards, patrolling the entrance to the mine shaft. He couldn't take them both silently. He needed a diversion. He tossed a small rock into a nearby pile of rubble, creating a faint noise. The guards stopped, their attention drawn to the sound. One of them moved to investigate, leaving his partner alone. Jason seized the opportunity. He ambushed the lone guard, disarming him with a lightning-fast strike. He used the guard's own rifle as a club, knocking him unconscious with a single blow to the head. The other guard turned back, alerted by the commotion. Jason was ready. He engaged the second guard in hand-to-hand combat, using his superior training and strength to overwhelm him. He dodged a clumsy punch, grabbed the guard's arm, and twisted it behind his back. The guard screamed in pain, but Jason silenced him with a chokehold, cutting off his air supply until he passed out. He secured the entrance to the mine shaft, removing any potential obstacles. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He knew the real challenge was about to begin. He was entering the heart of the Serpent's Hands territory, where the cult's most fanatical members awaited him. He was ready. He was coming for Lila, and nothing was going to stop him. The silent massacre had begun. The deeper Jason went into the mine shaft, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air was thick with the stench of decay and incense, a suffocating blend that clawed at his lungs. The walls were lined with crude symbols and disturbing murals, depicting scenes of torture and sacrifice. He knew he was getting closer to the heart of the cult. He rounded a corner and found himself in a large cavern, illuminated by flickering torches. Dozens of cult members, clad in dark robes and chanting in a guttural language, stood guard. They were armed with rifles, shotguns, and knives, their eyes burning with fanatical zeal. Stealth was no longer an option. "This is it," Jason muttered to himself, gripping his AR-15. Time to go loud. He unleashed a torrent of gunfire, the suppressed rounds tearing through the cavern, striking down cult members with deadly accuracy. The chanting stopped abruptly, replaced by screams of terror and the deafening roar of gunfire. The cultists returned fire, their bullets ricocheting off the walls and sending sparks flying. Jason took cover behind a pile of rubble, quickly assessing the situation. He was outnumbered, but he had the element of surprise. He used his training to his advantage, moving quickly and efficiently, taking down targets with controlled bursts of fire. He tossed a flashbang grenade into the center of the cavern, blinding the cultists and disorienting them. He used the opportunity to advance, taking down more targets as they stumbled around in confusion. He moved like a whirlwind, a force of nature unleashed upon the unsuspecting cult. The firefight intensified, the cavern filled with the deafening roar of gunfire, the acrid smell of gunpowder, and the screams of the dying. Jason was a one-man army, a relentless killing machine fueled by rage and determination. He moved from cover to cover, taking down targets with ruthless efficiency. He used his tactical skills to outmaneuver the cultists, flanking them, ambushing them, and exploiting their weaknesses. He knew they were fanatical, but they were also poorly trained and undisciplined. He used their lack of experience against them, turning their blind faith into a fatal flaw. He felt a searing pain in his side, a bullet grazing his ribs. He ignored the pain, focusing on the task at hand. He couldn't afford to get distracted. Lila's life depended on him. He pressed on, his determination unwavering. The massacre was in full swing. The mine shaft was about to become a tomb. The cavern was a charnel house. The air was thick with the smell of blood and death, the ground littered with the bodies of fallen cult members. Jason stood amidst the carnage, his body battered and bruised, his clothes torn and stained. He was wounded, exhausted, but his determination remained unbroken. He pushed forward, following the trail of blood and destruction, deeper into the mine shaft. He knew he was getting closer to the serpent, the man responsible for all this death and suffering. He could feel his presence, a palpable aura of evil that permeated the air. He reached a large chamber, the walls adorned with grotesque tapestries and arcane symbols. In the center of the chamber, on a raised platform, stood the serpent. He was a tall, gaunt figure, clad in a flowing black robe, his face hidden behind a silver mask. He radiated an unsettling charisma, a hypnotic power that drew people to him like moths to a flame. "You have come far, Jason Statham," the serpent said, his voice a smooth, hypnotic baritone. "But your journey ends here." He gestured, and the remaining cult members, a handful of the most devoted fanatics, stepped forward, their weapons raised. Jason ignored them, his focus solely on the serpent. He knew the cult leader was the key. Take him down and the rest would crumble. "This ends now," Jason growled, raising his AR-15. The serpent laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the chamber. "You cannot stop what is coming. The ritual is about to begin. Lila Monroe will be sacrificed, and her power will be mine." He raised his hands, and the cult members charged, their weapons blazing. Jason met them head-on, unleashing a torrent of gunfire. He moved with lightning speed, dodging bullets, disarming opponents, and taking them down with brutal efficiency. But the serpent didn't engage. He stood calmly on the platform, watching the carnage unfold, a sinister smile playing on his lips. He was confident in his power, in his destiny. He believed he was untouchable. As the last of the cult members fell, Jason turned his attention to the serpent. He advanced towards the platform, his AR-15 trained on the cult leader. "It's over, serpent," Jason said, his voice cold and unwavering. "Release Lila, and maybe I'll let you live." The serpent laughed again, his eyes burning with madness. "You cannot threaten me, Jason Statham. I am beyond your comprehension. I am the future." He lunged forward, revealing a hidden dagger. The showdown began. It was a brutal and desperate fight, a clash between two titans, each determined to destroy the other. Jason was stronger, faster, more skilled. But the serpent was fueled by madness and a fanatical belief in his own invincibility. The chamber shook with the force of their blows. The fight with the serpent was a blur of motion and violence. Jason dodged the cult leader's wild swings, countering with precise strikes that landed with bone-jarring force. He could see the madness in the serpent's eyes, the unhinged belief that he was destined for greatness. The serpent fought with a ferocity born of desperation, but Jason was too skilled, too disciplined. He disarmed the serpent, sending the dagger clattering to the floor. He grabbed the cult leader by the throat, his grip tightening. "Where is she?" Jason growled, his voice filled with rage. "Where is Lila?" The serpent struggled for breath, his face turning purple. He managed to croak out a single word, "Alter." Jason released the serpent, shoving him aside. He turned and raced towards the back of the chamber, following the serpent's gaze. He saw a narrow passage, leading into darkness. He didn't hesitate. He plunged into the darkness, his heart pounding in his chest. He emerged into a smaller chamber, illuminated by a single torch. In the center of the chamber, on a stone altar, lay Lila. She was bound and gagged, her eyes wide with terror. Around her stood the remaining cultists, chanting in a low, rhythmic drone. They were preparing for the final ritual.
"No!"
Jason roared, bursting into the chamber. The cultists turned, their faces contorted with rage. They raised their weapons, ready to defend their leader and their ritual. But Jason was too fast. He unleashed a barrage of gunfire, taking down the cultists before they could react. He rushed to Lila's side, quickly cutting her bonds. She was weak and disoriented, but alive. He pulled her into his arms, shielding her from the chaos. "It's okay, Lila," he said, his voice trembling with relief. "I'm here. You're safe now." The serpent staggered into the chamber, his face contorted with rage. He raised his hands, preparing to unleash a final, desperate attack. "You cannot stop me," he screamed, his voice cracking with madness. "I will have her power." But Jason was ready. He turned and fired a single shot, the bullet piercing the serpent's heart. The cult leader gasped, his eyes widening in disbelief. He crumpled to the ground, dead. The remaining cultists, their leader gone, their ritual thwarted, scattered in panic. Jason ignored them, his focus solely on Lila. He lifted her into his arms, carrying her out of the chamber, away from the darkness, towards the light. He had rescued her. He had fulfilled his promise. But the night was far from over. Jason carried Lila through the mine shaft, his every step fueled by adrenaline and a primal need to protect her. The remaining cultists, scattered and demoralized, posed little threat. He easily dispatched them, his movements swift and merciless. He reached the entrance to the mine shaft, the cool desert air a welcome relief after the suffocating atmosphere inside. He set Lila down gently, checking her for injuries. She was shaken but unharmed, her eyes filled with gratitude. "We need to go," Jason said, his voice urgent. "This place is about to become a tomb." He had planted explosives throughout the mine shaft during his infiltration, strategically placed to maximize the damage. He had set the timers before engaging the cult, knowing that he might not survive the rescue mission. But now, with Lila safe, he had to ensure that the serpent's hand was eradicated completely. He armed the detonator, a small device that fit in the palm of his hand. He looked at Lila, his eyes filled with a silent message of reassurance. "Hold on tight," he said. He pressed the button. The ground shook violently. A series of explosions ripped through the mine shaft, sending shockwaves through the surrounding desert. The entrance to the mine collapsed, burying the cult's base under tons of rock and debris. The remaining cult members, trapped inside, were obliterated in the inferno. The desert night was illuminated by a blinding flash of light, followed by a deafening roar. The sky was filled with smoke and dust, a testament to the destruction that had just been unleashed. The serpent's hand was no more. Their reign of terror had come to an end. Jason grabbed Lila's hand and pulled her away from the collapsing mine shaft. They ran through the desert, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They didn't stop until they reached a safe distance, far enough away to escape the blast radius. They turned back and watched as the mine shaft continued to crumble, the explosions echoing through the canyons. The fire raged, consuming everything in its path. It was a cleansing fire, a purifying force that was erasing the stain of the cult's evil from the earth. Jason knew that he had done what he had to do. He had protected Lila, he had avenged the victims of the serpent's hand, and he had destroyed a dangerous organization that threatened the innocent. He was a warrior, a protector, a force for good in a world filled with darkness. The burning mine shaft cast long, dancing shadows across the desert landscape. Jason and Lila walked in silence, their bodies weary, their minds still reeling from the night's events. The reign of the serpent's hand was over, reduced to ashes and rubble, but the scars of their terror would linger for a long time. Jason contacted his network, arranging for transportation. A helicopter arrived a few hours later, its rotors slicing through the air, a beacon of hope in the desolate landscape. They boarded the helicopter, leaving the burning compound behind them. As they flew away, Lila looked back at the inferno, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and sadness. She had been through a horrific ordeal, but she had survived. She owed her life to Jason, the silent guardian who had risked everything to save her. Jason sat beside her, his face stoic, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He had done what he had to do, but the violence had taken its toll. He was a warrior, but he was also a human being. He felt the weight of the lives he had taken, the burden of the darkness he had confronted. The helicopter landed at a private airfield, far from the prying eyes of the media and the authorities. A car was waiting for them, ready to whisk them away to safety. Jason knew that they couldn't stay in one place for long. The world would soon be buzzing with news of Lila's kidnapping and rescue. The serpent's hand had powerful allies, people who would want revenge. He needed to protect Lila, to keep her safe from harm. He decided to take her to a remote location, a place where they could disappear, where they could heal. He knew of a secluded cabin in the mountains, far from the city, far from the chaos. It was a place where they could be alone, where they could find peace. They drove through the night, their journey shrouded in secrecy. The world outside was unaware of the drama that had unfolded in the desert, the battle that had been fought, the victory that had been won. Jason and Lila were ghosts, moving through the shadows, leaving the cult's reign of terror in ashes. They were survivors, bound together by a shared experience, forever marked by the darkness they had faced. They didn't know what the future held, but they knew that they would face it together. The mountain air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and snow. Jason walked with a purpose, his footsteps sure and steady. He knew that Lila was safe, that she was ready to face the world again. His mission was complete. He reached a secluded clearing, where a small plane was waiting for him. He boarded the plane, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He was heading back into the shadows, back to the world of violence and darkness that he knew so well. He wasn't a hero, he wasn't a savior. He was just a soldier, a protector, a man who did what had to be done. He didn't seek recognition, he didn't crave praise. He was content to fade back into the background, to disappear without a trace. As the plane took off, he thought of Lila, of her kindness, her compassion, her unwavering spirit. He knew that she would make a difference in the world, that she would use her platform to inspire hope and to fight for justice. He smiled, a fleeting expression of satisfaction. He had played his part, he had protected the innocent, and he had destroyed the evil that threatened to consume them. He was leaving the world a better place than he had found it. He closed his eyes, letting the drone of the engine lull him into a state of peaceful oblivion. He knew that his journey was far from over, that there would always be darkness to fight, that there would always be people who needed his help. He was Jason Statham, and he was a protector. He was a force for good, a silent guardian who watched over the innocent. He was a legend, a myth, a whisper in the shadows. And as the plane soared through the sky, he disappeared back into the darkness, his duty fulfilled, his purpose unwavering. The massacre was over, but the fight for justice would continue. Jason Statham would always be there, lurking in the shadows, ready to answer the call. The world was a safer place, even if it didn't know his name. The end.